They started down the slope together. Beside the stream below, the Shinarans, who could stand, were gathered around Uno. From his gestures, the one-eyed man was making up for lost time with his cursing. How did you two become privileged? Min demanded abruptly. She asked you. She didn't do me the courtesy of asking. Boyle shook his head.
I think she asked because she knew what we would answer. Moraine seems able to read Perrin and me. She knows what we'll do. But you are a clear book to her.
Min appeared only. She looked up at them, Perrin head and shoulders taller on one side, and Loyal towering even higher on the other. Much good it does me. I'm still going where she wants as easily as you two little lambs. You were doing well for a while, Perrin. Standing up to her like she'd sold you a coat and the seams were popping open. I did stand up to her, didn't I? Perrin said wonderingly. He had not really realized he had done that. It was not so bad as I'd have thought it would be. Well, you're an honest guy used to put your head in a hornet's nest. Loyal, Min said. I need to speak to Perrin. Alone. Would you mind?
Oh, of course not.
He lengthened his stride to its normal span and quickly moved ahead of them, pulling his pipe and tobacco pouch from a coat pocket. Perrin eyed her warily. She was biting her lip as if considering what to say. You ever see things about him? He asked, nodding after the Ogier. She shook her head. I think it only works with humans. But I've seen things around you that you ought to know about. I've told you, don't be more thick-headed than you have to be. Back there, right up there. They were not there before. It must have to do with this journey, or at least with you deciding to go. After a moment, he said reluctantly, what did you see? An Aielman in a cage, she said promptly. A Duathlon with a sword. A falcon and a hawk perching on your shoulders. Both female, I think. And all the rest, of course. What is always there. Darkness swirling around you, and none of that, he said quickly. When he was sure she had stopped, he scratched his head thinking. None of it made any sense to me. Do you have any idea what it all means? The new things, I mean. No, but they're important. The things I see always are. People's lives, or what's faded. It's always important. For a moment, glanced at him. One more thing, she said slowly. If you meet a woman, the most beautiful woman you've ever seen, run. You saw a beautiful woman. Why should I run from a beautiful woman? Can't you just take advice? She said irritably. She kicked at a stone and watched it roll down the slope. Bear did not like jumping to conclusions. It was one of the reasons some people thought him slow-witted. But he totaled up a number of things Min had said in the last few days and came to a start. He stopped dead, hunting for words. Min, you know I like you. I like you, but, you sort of remind me of my sisters. I mean, you... The flow stumbled to a halt as she raised her head to look at him, eyebrows arched. She wore a small smile. Why, Perrin, you must know that I love you. She stood there, watching his mouth work, then spoke slowly and carefully. Like a brother, you great wooden-headed lummox. The arrogance of men never ceases to amaze me. You all think everything has to do with you, and every woman has to desire you. Perrin felt his face growing hot. I didn't. He cleared his throat. What did you see about a woman? Just take my advice, she said, and started down toward the stream again, walking fast. If you forget all the rest, she called over her shoulder, heed that. He frowned after her. For once, his thoughts seemed to arrange themselves quickly, then caught up in two strides. It's Rand, isn't it? She made a sound in her throat and gave him a sidelong look. She did not slow down, though. Maybe he wasn't so boneheaded after all, she muttered. After a moment, she added, as if to herself, I'm bound to him as surely as a stave is bound to a barrel. but I can't see if he'll ever love me in return. And I'm not the only one. Does Egwene know? He asked. Brandon and Egwene had been all but promised since childhood. Everything but kneeling in front of the women's circle of the village to speak the betrothal. He was not sure how far they had drifted from that, if at all. She knows, Min said curtly. Much good it does either of us. What about Rand? Does he know? No, of course, she said bitterly. I told him, didn't I? Rand, I did a viewing of you, and it seems I have to fall in love with you. I have to share you, too. And I don't much like that, but there it is. You're a wooden-headed wonder after all, Perrine Barr. She dashed a hand across her eyes angrily. If I could be with him, I know I could help. Somehow. But if he dies, I don't know if I can stand it. Perrin shrugged uncomfortably. Listen, man. I'll do what I can to help him. However much that is. I promise you that. It's for you to go to Tarvalon. You'll be safe there. Safe? She tasted the word as if wondering what it meant. You think Tarvalon is safe? If there's no safety in Tarvalon, there's no safety anywhere. She sniffed loudly, and in silence they went to join those preparations to leave. Chapter 7. The Way Out of the Mountains. The mountains was hard. The lower they went, the better needed his fur-lined cloak. Hour by hour they rode out of the tailings of winter into the first days of spring. The last remnants of snow vanished, and grasses and wildflowers, white maiden's hope and pink jump-up, began to cover the high meadows they crossed. Trees appeared more often, with more leaves, and grass larks and robins sang in the branches. And there were wolves. Never in sight, not even Lan mentioned seeing one. But Perrin knew. He kept his mind firmly closed to them, yet now and again a feather-light tickle at the back of his mind reminded him they were there. Lan spent most of his time with the black warhorse Mondar. Its tracks as the rest of the an arrow of stone, lightly scratched in the rock wall. Turn this way, across that saddle pass. Take this switchback, this deer trail, this way through the trees and down along a narrow stream, even though there's nothing to indicate anyone has ever gone that way before. Nothing but land signs. A tuft of grass or weeds tied one way to say bear left, another for bear right. A bent branch. A pile of pebbles for a rough climb ahead. 2 leaves caught on a thorn for a steep descent. The warder had 100 signs, it seemed to Perrin, and Moraine knew them all. Lan rarely came back except when they made camp to confer with Moraine quietly. When the sun rose, was gone already. Moraine was always first into the saddle after him, while the eastern sky was just turning pink. The Aes Sedai would not have climbed down from Aldib, the white mare, until full dark or later, except that Lan refused to track further once the light began to fail. We'll go even slower if a horse breaks a leg, the warder would tell Moraine when she complained. Her reply was always very much the same. If you cannot move any faster than this, perhaps I should send you off to Myrella before you get any older. Well, perhaps that can wait. But you must move us faster. She half sounded as if the threat were irritated truth, half as if she were making a joke. There was something of a threat in it, or maybe a warning, Perrin was sure, from the way Lan's mouth tightened, even when she smiled afterwards and reached up to pat his shoulder soothingly. Who is Myrella? Perrin asked suspiciously. Perrin shook his head. Things happening to those who ride into Aes Sedai affairs. The Ophir's hairy fetlocked horse was as tall and heavy as a Duran stallion. But with Loyal's long legs dangling to either side, the animal looked undersized, like a large pony. Moraine gave an amused, secretive smile. Just a green sister. Someone to whom Lan must one day deliver a package for safekeeping. No day soon, Lan said. Surprisingly, there was open anger in his voice. Never, if I can help it. You will outlive me long, Moraine Aes Sedai. She has too many secrets, Perrin thought. But ask no more about a subject that could crack the warder's iron self-control. Aes Sedai had a blanket the dragon bag. Baron was uneasy about having it with them, but Moraine had neither asked his opinion nor listened when he offered it. Not that anyone was likely to recognize it if he saw it, yet he hoped she was as good at keeping secrets from other people as she was at keeping them from him. In the beginning, at least, it was a boring journey. One cloud-capped mountain was very much like another, one pass little different from the next. Supper was usually a rabbit, dropped by stones from the parents' sling. He did not have so many arrows as to risk shooting at rabbits in that rocky country. Breakfast was cold rabbit, more often than not, and the midday meal the same, eaten in the saddle. Sometimes when they camped near a stream and there was still light enough to see, he and Loyal caught mountain trout lying on their bellies, hands pulling the greenbacked fish out from under the rock ledges where they hid. Loyal's fingers, big as they were even more deft at it than parents. Once, 3 days after setting out, Moraine joined them, stretching herself out on the stream side and undoing rows of pearl buttons to roll up her sleeves as she asked how the thing was done. Baron exchanged surprised looks with Loyal. Yogir shrugged. It is not that hard, really, Baron told her. Just bring your hand up from behind the fish and underneath, as if you're trying to tickle its belly. Then you pull it out. It takes practice, though. You might not catch anything the first few times you try.
I tried for days before I ever caught anything,
Loyal added. He was already easing his huge hands into the water, careful to keep his shadow from scaring the fish. As difficult as that, Moraine murmured. Her hands slipped into the water, and a moment later came out with a splash, holding a fat trout that thrashed the surface. She laughed with delight as she tossed it up onto the bank. Baron blinked at the big fish flopping in the fading sunlight. It must have weighed at least 5 pounds. You were very lucky, he said. Trout that size don't often shelter under a ledge this small. We'll have to move upstream a bit. It will be dark before any of them settle under this ledge again. Is that so? Moraine said. You two go ahead. I think I will just try here again. Baron hesitated a moment before moving up the bank to another overhang. She was up to something, but he could not imagine what. That troubled him. Belly down and careful not to let his shadow fall on the water, he peered over the edge. Half a dozen slender shapes hung suspended in the water, barely moving a fin to hold their places. All of them together would not weigh as much as Moraine's fish, he decided with a sigh. They were lucky he had trees, with the shadows of trees in the far bank already stretched across the water. Whatever they caught now would be it. Loyal's appetite was big enough by itself to swallow those 4, and most of the bigger fish, too. Loyal's hands were already easing up behind one of the trout. Before Baron could even slide his hands into the water, Moraine gave a shout. 3 should be enough, I think. The last 2 are bigger than the first. Baron gave Loyal a startled look. She can't have. The Yogir straightened, sending the small trout scattering.
She is Aes Sedai,
he said simply. Sure enough, when they returned to Moraine, 3 big trout lay on the bank. She was already buttoning her sleeves up again. Baron thought about reminding her that whoever took the fish was supposed to clean them too, but just at that moment she caught his eye. There was no particular expression on her smooth face, but her dark eyes did not waver, and they appeared to know what he was going to say, and to have dismissed it out of hand already. When she turned away, it seemed somehow too late to say anything. Muttering to himself, Baron pulled out his belt knife and set to gutting and heading. All of a sudden, she's forgotten about it. I suppose she has to do the cooking as well, and the cleaning up after.
No doubt she will,
Loyal said, without pausing over the fish he was working on.
She is Aes Sedai.
I seem to remember hearing that somewhere. Baron's knife ripped into the fish. The Shinarans might have been willing to run around fetching and carrying for her. But there are only 4 of us now. We should keep on turn and turn about. It's only fair. Loyal gave a great snort of laughter.
I doubt she sees it that way. First, she had to put up with Rand arguing with her all the time, and now you're ready to take over for him. As a rule, Aes Sedai do not let anyone argue with them. I expect she means to have us back in the habit of doing what she says by the time we reach the first village.
A good habit to be in, Lance said, throwing back his cloak. In the fading light, he had appeared out of nowhere. Theron nearly fell over the ears when stiff with shock. Had heard the warder's step. A habit you should never have lost, Lan added, then strode off toward Moraine and the horses. His boots barely made a sound, even on that rocky ground. Once he was a few paces away, the cloak hanging down his back gave him the uneasy appearance of a disembodied head and arms drifting up from the stream. We need her to find Rand, Aaron said softly, but I am not going to let her shape my life anymore. He went back to his cloak vigorously. He meant to keep that promise. He really did. But during the days that followed, in some way he did not quite understand. He found that he and Loyal were doing the cooking and the cleaning up, and any other little chore that Moraine thought of. He even discovered that somehow or other he had taken over tending Aldib every night, unsaddling the mare and rubbing her down while Moraine settled herself, apparently deep in thought. Loyal gave in to it as inevitable, but not Perrin. He tried resisting, but it was hard to resist when she made a reasonable suggestion, and a small one at that. Only there was always another suggestion behind it, as reasonable and small as the first, and then another. The simple force of her presence, the strength of her gaze, made it difficult to protest. Her dark eyes would catch his at the moment he opened his mouth. A lift of her eyebrow to suggest he was being rude, a surprised widening of her eyes that he could object to so small a request. A level stare that held in it everything that was eyes to eye. All these things could make him hesitate. And once he hesitated, there was never any recovering lost ground. He accused her of using the one power on him, though he did not really think that was it. And she told him not to be a fool. He began to feel like a piece of iron, trying to stop a smith from hammering it into a scythe. The mountains of mist gave way abruptly to the forested foothills of Gillidan, the land that seemed all up and down, but never very high. Deer, which in the mountains had often watched them warily, as if uncertain what a man was, began to bound away, white tails flickering at the first sight of the horses. Even Perrin now caught only the faintest glimpses of the gray-striped mountain cats that seemed to fade away like smoke. They were coming into the lands of men. Lan stopped wearing his color-shifting cloak and began riding back to the rest of them, telling them what lay ahead. In many places, the trees had all been cut. Soon, people by rough stone walls and farmers plowing around the sides of hills were common sights, if not exactly frequent, along with lines of people moving across the plowed ground, sowing seed from sacks slung from their shoulders. Scattered farmhouses and barns of gray stone sat on hilltops and ridges. The wolves should not have been there. Wolves avoided places where men were, but Perrin could still sense them, an unseen screen and escort bringing the mounted party. Impatience filled him, impatience to reach a village or a town, any place where there were enough men to make the wolves go away. A day after sighting the first field, just as the sun touched the horizon behind them, they came to the village of Jara, not far north of the border with Amadisia. Chapter 8. Jara. Gray stone houses with slate roofs lay clustered along the few narrow streets of Jara, clinging to a hillside above a little stream spanned by a low wooden bridge. The muddy streets were empty, and so was the green, except for one man sweeping the steps of the village's only inn, standing beside its stone stable, but it looked as if there had been a good many people on the green not long before. Half a dozen arches woven of green branches and dotted with such few flowers as could be found this early in the year stood in a circle in the middle of the grass. The ground had a trampled look, and there were other signs of a gathering. A woman's red scarf lying tangled at the foot of one of the arches, a child's knitted cap, a pewter pitcher tumbled on its side, a few half-eaten scraps of food. The aromas of sweet wine and spiced cakes flung about the green, mixed in with smoke from dozens of chimneys and evening meals cooking. For an instant, Perrin's nose caught another odor, one he could not identify, a faint trail that raised the hair on the back of his neck with its vileness. Then it was gone. But he was sure something had passed that way, something wrong. He scrubbed at his nose as if to rub away the memory of it. It can't be Rand. Like, even if he has gone mad, that can't be him, can it? A painted sign hung above the inn door, a man standing on one foot with his arms thrown in the air. Harlan's Leap. As they drew rein in front of the square stone building, the sweeper straightened, yawning fiercely. He gave a start at Perrin's eyes, but his own already protruding eyes went wide when they fell on Loyal. With his wide mouth and no chin to speak of, he looked something like a frog. There was an old smell of sour wine about him, to Perrin at least. The fellow had certainly been part of the celebration. The man gave himself a shake and turned it into a bow with one hand resting on the double row of wooden buttons running down his coat. His eyes flickered from one to another of them, popping even more every time they rested on Loyal.
Welcome, good mistress, and the light illumine your way. Welcome, good masters. You wish food, rooms, baths? All to be had here at the Leap. Master Herod, the innkeeper, keeps a good house. I am called Simeon. If you wish anything, ask for Simeon, and he will get it for you.
He yawned again, covering his mouth in embarrassment and bowing to hide it.
I beg your pardon, good mistress. You have come far? Have you word of the great hunt? The hunt for the Horn of Valir? Or the false dragon? It said there's a false dragon in Tarabon. Or maybe Arad-Daman.
We have not come that far, Lan said, swinging down from the saddle. No doubt you know more than I. They all began dismounting.
You have had a wedding here?
Moraine said.
A wedding, good mistress? Why, we've had a lifetime of weddings. A plague of them. All in the last 2 days. There isn't a woman old enough to speak the betrothal remains unmarried. Not in the whole village. Not for a mile in any direction. Why, even Widow Jorith dragged old Bonus through the arches. And they'd both sworn they'd never marry again. It was like a whirlwind, just snatched everybody up. Lilith, the weaver's daughter, she started it. Blacksmith to marry her, and him old enough to be her father and more. The old fool just took off his apron and said yes. And she demanded the arches be put up right then and there. Wouldn't hear of a proper wait. And all the other women sided with her. Since then, we've had marriages day and night. Why, nobody's had any sleep at all, hardly.
That's very interesting, Perrin said when Simeon paused to yawn again. But have you seen a young... It is very interesting, Moraine said, cutting him off. And I would like to hear more of it later, perhaps. For now, we would like rooms and a meal. Lan made a small gesture toward Perrin, down low, as if telling him to hold his tongue.
Oh, of course, good mistress. A meal, rooms.
Simeon hesitated, eyeing Loyal.
We'll have to push 2 beds together for...
He leaned closer to Moraine and dropped his voice.
Pardon, good mistress, but what exactly is he? Meaning no disrespect,
he added hastily. He had not spoken softly enough, for Loyal's ears twitched irritably.
I am an Ogier. What did you think I was, a Trolloc?
Simeon took a step back at the booming voice.
Trolloc, good, master. Why, I'm a grown man. I don't believe in children's tales. Did you say Ogier? Why, Ogier are I mean...
Hey, Stoy, how you doing?
In desperation, he
Thanks
turned
for
to the
stopping
fellow
by.
in the stable next to the inn.
Hope you're doing well.
Nico, Patra, visitors, come see to their horses.
After a moment,
Yeah,
2
yeah,
boys
that's
with hay in
appreciated,
their
so-
hair tumbled out of the stable, yawning and rubbing their eyes. Simeon gestured to the steps, bowing as the boys
Yeah.
gathered reins. Perrin slung his saddlebags and blanket roll over his shoulder and carried his bow as he followed Moraine and Lan inside, with Simeon bowing and bobbing ahead of him. Loyal had to duck low under the lintel, and the ceiling inside only cleared his head by a foot. He kept rumbling to himself about not understanding why so few humans remembered the Ogier. His voice was like distant thunder. Even Perrin, right in front of him, could only understand half of his words. The inn smelled of ale and wine, cheese and weariness, and the aroma of roasting mutton drifted from somewhere in the back. The few men in the common room sagged over their mugs as if they would really like to lie down on the benches and go to sleep. One plump serving woman was drawing a mug of ale from one of the barrels at the end of the room. The innkeeper himself, in a long white apron, sat on a tall stool in the corner, leaning against the wall. As the newcomers entered, he lifted his head with bleary eyes. His jaw dropped at the sight of Loyal.
Visitors, Master Harrod,
Simeon announced.
they want rooms. Master Harrod? He's an Ogier, Master Harrod.
The serving woman turned and saw Loyal and dropped the mug with a clatter. None of the weary men at the tables even looked up. One had put his head down on the table and was snoring. Loyal's ears twitched violently. Master Harrod got to his feet slowly, eyes fastened on Loyal, smoothing his apron all the while.
At least he is in a white cloak.
He said at last, then gave a start as if surprised.
Hope your night's going good, Soy.
That is to say, welcome, good mistress,
Good masters.
Forgive my lack of manners. I can only plead tiredness, good mistress.
He darted another glance at Loyal and mouthed, Ogier, with a look of disbelief. Loyal opened his mouth, but Moraine forestalled him. As your man said, good innkeeper, I wish rooms for my party for the night and a meal.
Oh, of course, good mistress, of course. Simeon, show these good people to my best rooms, so they can put down their belongings. I'll have a fine meal laid out for you when you return, good mistress. A fine meal. If it pleases you to follow me, good mistress, Simeon said. Good masters.
He bowed the way to stairs at one side of the common room. Behind them, one of the men at the tables suddenly exclaimed,
What in the name of the light is that?
Master Harrod began explaining about Ogier, making it sound as if
Oh, yeah.
Most
See
of
if I
us
can
have
manage to
before
get
they
through
let the voices
another
behind was wrong.
another hit.
Loyal's
It's been
ears
a while
twitched
since I've
without
had
stopping.
I've been able to hit this.
On the second floor, the Ogier's head came near to brushing along the
Still a
ceiling.
little rough sometimes.
The narrow corridor was growing dark, with only the sharp light of sunset through a window next to the door at the far end.
The candles in the rooms, good mistress, Simeon said. I should have brought a lamp, but my head is still spinning from all those weddings. I'll send someone up to light the fire if you wish. And you'll want wash water, of course.
He pushed open a door.
Our best room, good mistress. We don't have not many strangers, you see. But this is our best.
I'll take the one, Lance said. He had Moraine's blanket roll and saddlebags on his shoulder, as well as his own, the bundle containing the dragon banner.
Oh, I am. It just holds a
That's not a very good room at all.
nice little personal bowl, some
Meant for a
flour
servant,
in
I
there.
suspect. As if we'd ever have anybody here who had a servant. Begging your pardon, good mistress.
I will take it. said Frodo.
Simeon, Moraine said. Does Master Harrod dislike the children of the light? Well, he does, good mistress. He didn't, but he does. It isn't good policy disliking the children, not so close to the border as we are. They come through Jara all the time, like there wasn't any border at all. But there was trouble yesterday. Fistful of trouble. And with the weddings going on and all, what happened, Simeon?
The man looked at her sharply before answering. Perrin did not think anyone.
There was about 20 of them come day before yesterday. No trouble then. But yesterday, why, 3 of them up and announced they weren't children of the light anymore. They took off their cloaks and just rode away.
Lan grunted. White cloaks swear for life. What did their commander do?
You must have done something. But another of them announced earlier. Anyway, still another said they would be hunting
Oh,
for
that would
dragon.
hit my back.
That one said he was going to Almouth Plain when he left. Then some of them started saying things to women in the streets. Things they shouldn't have. And grabbing at them. The women were screaming and children yelling at the ones bothering the women. I never saw such commotion.
Didn't any of you try to stop them? Perrin said.
Good master. Looks like you know how to use it. But it isn't so easy to face up to men with swords and armor and all, when all you know how to use is a broom or a hoe. The rest of the white cloaks, those that hadn't gone off, put an end to it, almost came to drawing swords. And that wasn't the worst. 2 more just went mad, if the others weren't. Those 2 started raving that Jara was full of darkness. They tried to burn the village down. Said they would. Beginning with the leap. You could see the burn marks out back, where they got it started. Fought the other white cloaks when they tried to stop them. The white cloaks that were left, they helped us put it out. tied those two up tight, and rode out of here. Back toward Amadisia. Good riddance, I say.
They might actually have to take a break on that one again. That one was a little rough.
Lance said, even for white cloaks. Simeon bobbed his head in agreement.
As you see, good master. They never acted like that before. Swagger around, yes. Look at you like you were dirt. And poke their noses in where they hadn't done anything. But they never caused trouble. Not like that. They are gone now, Maureen said, and trouble is with them.
I am sure we will pass a quiet night. Baron kept his mouth shut, but he was not quiet inside. All these weddings in white cloaks are all very well, but I'd sooner know if Rand stopped here, and which way he went when he left. That smell couldn't have been him. He let Simeon guide him on down the hall to another room, with 2 beds and a washstand, a pair of stools, and not much else. Loyal stooped to put his head through the doorway. Only a little light came in by the narrow windows. The beds were big enough, with blankets and comforters folded at the foot, but the mattresses looked lumpy. Simeon fumbled on the mantel above the fireplace until he found a candle and a tinderbox to get it alight.
Put together for you, good, oh dear. Yes, just a moment now.
He showed no sign of hurry to be about it, though, fussing with the candlestick as if he had to place it just right. Theron thought he looked uneasy. Well, I'd be more than uneasy if white cloaks had been acting like that in Emmons Field. Simeon, has another stranger passed through here in the last day or two? A young man, tall, with gray eyes and reddish hair. He might have played the flute for a meal or a bed.
I remember him, good master,
Simeon said, still shifting the candlestick.
Came yesterday morning early. Looked hungry, he did. He played the flute for all the weddings yesterday. Good-looking fellow. Some of the women eyed him at first, but...
He paused, looking at Perrin sideways.
Is he a friend of yours, good master?
I know him, Perrin said.
Why?
Simeon hesitated.
For no reason, good master. He was an odd fellow, that's all. He talked to himself sometimes. Sometimes he laughed when nobody had said anything. Slept in this very room last night, or part of it. Woke us all in the middle of the night yelling. It was just a nightmare, but he wouldn't stay any longer. Master Harrod didn't make much effort to talk him into it, after all that noise.
Simeon paused again.
He said something strange when he left.
What? Perrin demanded.
He said somebody was after him, he said.
The chinless man swallowed and went on more slowly.
Said they'd kill him if he didn't go. One of us has to die, and I mean it to be him. His very words.
He did not mean us,
Loyal rumbled.
we are his friends.
Of course, good of course he didn't mean you. I don't mean to say anything about a friend of yours, but I think he's sick. In the head, you know.
We will take care of him, Perrin said. That's why we're following him. Which way did he go?
I knew it,
Simeon said, bouncing on his toes.
I knew she could help as soon as I saw you. Which way? East, good master. East, like the Dark One himself was on his heels. Do you think she'll help me? Help my brother, that is. Gnome's bad sick. Mother Rune says she can't do anything.
Perrin kept his face expressionless and bought a little time to think by propping his bow in the corner and setting his blanket roll and saddlebags on one of the beds. The problem was that thinking did not help much. He looked at Loyal, but found no help there. Consternation had the Ogier's ears drooping and his long eyebrows hanging down on his cheeks. What makes you think she can help your brother?
Stupid question. The right question is, what does he mean to do about it? Why, I traveled to Johanna once, good master, and I saw two women like her. I couldn't mistake her after that.
His voice dropped to a whisper.
It said, they can raise the dead, good master.
Who else knows this? Perrin asked sharply. At the same time, Loyal said,
If your brother is there is nothing anyone.
The frog-faced man looked from one to the other of them anxiously, and his words came in a babble.
No one knows but me, good master. Gnome isn't dead, good old dear, but only sick. I swear nobody else could recognize her. Even Master Herod's never been more than 20 miles from here in his life. He's so bad sick. I'd ask her myself, only my knees would be shaking so hard she couldn't hear me talk. What if she took offense and called down lightning on me? And what if I'd been wrong? It isn't the kind of thing you accuse a woman of without... I mean, He raised his hands, half in pleading, half as if to defend himself. I can make no promises, Baron said, but I'll speak to her. Loyal, why don't you keep Simeon company till I've spoken to Moraine?
Of course.
He'll give room. Simeon gave a start when Loyal's hand swallowed his shoulder.
He will show me my room and we will talk. Tell me, Simeon, what do you know of trees?
It's trees good up here? Baron did not wait any longer. He hurried back down the dark hall and knocked on Moraine's door, barely waiting for her peremptory come before pushing in. Half a dozen candles showed that the Leaf's best room was none too good. Though the one bed had 4 tall posts supporting a canopy, the mattress looked less full of lumps than Baron's. There was a scrap of carpet on the floor and 2 cushioned chairs instead of stools. Other than that, it looked no different from his room. Moraine and Lan stood in front of the cold hearth as if they had been discussing something, and the Aes Sedai did not look pleased at being interrupted. The warder's face was as imperturbable. Rand's been here all right, Baron started off. That fellow Simeon remembers him. Moraine hissed through her teeth. You were told to keep your mouth shut, Lan growled. Baron squared his feet to face the warder. That was easier than facing Moraine's glare. How could we find out whether he had been here without asking questions? Tell me that. He left last
Hey,
night.
John McDonald, how you doing, bro?
And he was carrying on about somebody following him, trying to kill him.
I appreciate it.
Moraine
Hope you're having a good evening, John McDonald.
With her disapproving eyes. That is good to know, though it had to be so if he is
Mine's not going too bad.
But I was fairly certain he had been here. Brad is almost surely right about one thing, Karen. I cannot believe we are the only ones trying to find him. If they find out about us, they may well try to stop us. We have enough to contend with trying to catch up to Rand without that. You must learn to hold your tongue until I tell you to speak. The White Cloaks? Baron said incredulously.
Hell yeah, John McDonald.
They tell you. Is it catching? Not is mad.
It's always good when you get
If he is far enough gone yet,
some new wax, especially if it's fire.
To Baron than anyone since the Age of Legends. Yesterday in this village, the pattern moved, shaped itself like clay shaped on a mold. The weddings, the white cloaks. These
Oh yeah, John McDonald, appreciate it. Hope you have a good weekend too. And stay safe.
And this is what we'll find everywhere he's been. Like, if there are shadow spawn after him, they can track him as easily as we can. Perhaps, Moraine said. Perhaps not. No one knows anything about Ta'Veren as strong as Rand. For just a moment, she sounded vexed at not knowing. Arthur Hawkwane was the most strongly Ta'Veren of whom any writings remain. Hawkwane there were times when people in the same room with Hawkwane spoke truth when they meant to lie, made decisions when they had not even known they were contemplating. Times when every toss of the dice, every turn of the cards went his way. But only times. You mean you don't know, Baron said. He could leave a trail of weddings and white cloaks gone mad all the way to Tyr. I mean I know as much as there is to know, Moraine said sharply. Her dark-eyed gaze chastised Baron like a whip. The pattern weaves, said Baron. And others can follow the shape of those threads if they know where to look. Be careful your tongue does not unravel more than you can know. In spite of himself, Baron hunched his shoulders as if she were delivering real blows. Well, you had better be glad I opened my mouth this time. Simeon knows your Aes Sedai. He wants you to heal his brother Gnome of some sickness. If I hadn't talked to him, he would never have worked up nerve enough to ask. But he might have started talking among his friends. Lan caught Moraine's eye, and for a moment they stared at one another. The warder had the air about him of a wolf about to leap. Finally, Moraine shook her head. No, she said.
As you wish. It is your decision. Lan sounded as if he thought she had made the wrong one, but the tension left him.
Perrin stared at them. You were thinking of... Simeon couldn't tell anyone if he were dead, could he? He will not die by my actions, Moraine said. But I cannot and will not promise that it will always be so. We must find Rand, and I will not fail in that. That spoken plainly enough. She nodded as if his silence were answer enough. Now take me to Simeon. The door to Loyal's room stood open, spilling a pool of candlelight into the hall. The two beds inside had been pushed together, and Loyal and Simeon were seated on the edge of one. The chinless man was staring up at Loyal with his mouth open, and an expression of wonder in his face.
Oh, yes, the study are wonderful,
Loyal was saying.
There is such peace there under the great trees. You humans may have your wars and strife, but nothing ever troubles the steady. We tend the trees and live in harmony.
He trailed off when he saw Moraine, with Lan and Perrin behind her. Simeon scrambled to his feet, bowing and backing away until he came up against the far wall. Good mistress. Even then, he continued bobbing like a toy on a string. Show me to your brother, Moraine commanded, and I will do what I can. Perrin, you will come too, since this good man spoke to you first. Lan lifted an eyebrow, and she shook her head. If we all go, we might attract attention. Perrin can give me what protection I need. Lan gave Perrin a hard look. You do, blacksmith. Falls there. His cold blue eyes finished the promise. Simeon snatched one of the candles and scurried into the hallway, still bowing so the candlelight made their shadows dance. This way, good mistress, this way. Beyond the door at the end of the hall, outside stairs led down to a vanished alleyway between inn and stable. Night shrank the candle to a flickering pinpoint. The half moon was up in a star-flecked sky, giving more than enough light for Perrin's eyes. He wondered when Moraine would tell Simeon he did not have to keep bowing, but she never did. The Aes Sedai glided along, clutching her skirts to keep them out of the mud, as though the dark passage were a palace hall and she a queen. The air was already cooling. Nights still carried echoes of winter. This way. Simeon led them back to a small shed behind the stable and hurriedly unbarred the door. This way, Simeon pointed. There, good mistress, there. My brother Gnome. The far end of the shed had been barred off with slats of wood. A stout iron lock and a hasp held shut a crude door of wooden slats. Behind those bars, a man lay sprawled on his stomach on the straw-covered floor. He was barefoot. His
Right back,
breeches
everyone.
ripped as if he had torn at them without knowing how to take them off. There was an odor of unwashed flesh that Perrin thought even Simeon and Moraine must smell. Gnome lifted his head and stared at them silently, without expression. There was nothing at all about him to suggest he was Simeon's brother. He had a chin, for one thing, and he was a big man with heavy shoulders. But that was not what staggered Perrin. Gnome stared at them with burnished, golden eyes. He'd been talking crazy almost a year, good mistress, saying he could talk with wolves. And his eyes. Simeon darted a glance at Perrin. Well, he'd talk about it when he drunk too much. Everybody laughed at him. But then a month or so ago, he didn't come to town. I went out to see what was the matter. And I found him. Like this. Cautiously, unwillingly, Perrin reached out toward Gnome as he would have toward a wolf. Running through the woods with the cold wind in his nose. Quick dash for cover, teeth snapping at hamstrings. Taste of blood, rich on the tongue. Kill. Perrin jerked back, as he would have from a fire. sealed himself off. They were not thoughts at all, really. Just a chaotic jumble of desires and images, part memory, part yearning. But there was more wolf there than anything else. He put a hand to the wall to steady himself. His knees felt weak. Might help me. Moraine put a hand on the lock. Master Herod has the key, good mistress. I don't know if he'll... She gave a tug, and the lock sprang open. Simeon gaped at her. She lifted the lock free of the hasp, and the chinless man turned to Perrin. Is that safe, good master? He's my brother, but he bit Mother Rune when she tried to help, and he killed a cow with his teeth. He finished faintly. Moraine, Perrin said, the man is dangerous. All men are dangerous, she replied in a cool voice. Now be quiet. She opened the door and went in. Perrin held his breath. At her first step, Gnome's lips peeled back from his teeth and he began to growl. A rumble that deepened till his whole body quivered. Moraine ignored it. Still growling, Gnome wriggled backwards in the straw as she came closer to him until he had backed himself into a corner. Or she had backed him. Slowly, calmly, the Aes Sedai knelt and took his head between her hands. Gnome's growl heightened to a snarl, then tailed off in a whimper before Perrin could move. For a long moment, Moraine held Gnome's head, then just as calmly released it and rose. Perrin's throat tightened as she turned her back on Gnome and walked out of the cage, but the man only stared after her. She pushed the slatted door to, slipped the lock back through the hasp, not bothering to snap it shut. And Gnome hurled himself snarling against the wooden bars. He bit at them and battered them with his shoulders, trying to force his head between them, all the while snarling and snapping. Moraine brushed straw from her skirt with a steady hand and no expression. You two take chances, Perrin breathed. She looked at him, a steady, knowing gaze, and he dropped his eyes. His yellow eyes. Simeon was staring at his brother. Can you help him, good mistress? I am sorry, Simeon, she said. Something. One of those. His voice fell to a whisper. Aes Sedai things. Healing is not a simple matter, Simeon. It comes from within as much as from the healer. There is nothing here that remembers being known. Nothing that remembers being a man. There are no maps remaining to show him the path back. Nothing left to take that path.
Alright, everyone. Probably going to call into this live for tonight.
He just used to talk
I want to thank everyone stopping by and who keeps coming back and kicking it with me for a little bit they do.
Thank you, good mistress.
But until next time, everyone, stay safe out there.